Hey, Andrew, thank you for coming in. You have this amazing background, as a motivational speaker, community volunteer, um, working with not-for-profit organizations, of course, clearly working with CIPS, the Canadian Information Processing Society in leadership, data management, project and program implementation, policy development, research and development, health and safety. So it's kind of an amazing background here. I'm just making some adjustments to my computers and on my screens. But again, thank you for coming in and sharing your insights with my audience.
Absolutely.
So, Andrew, you got this really amazing background, and you're continuing to make outstanding contributions to the country and to society. What were those, maybe three inflection points in your life that made this wonderful person you are today and this amazing career that you have? And it could have been something that happened when you were 3 or 5, inside, outside school, in the family, outside the family. It could be major career moves, etc. So, what were those three moments?
Actually, my three moments were really my parents. Definitely where they come from the Caribbean and so forth. They really brought in that foundational piece of knowing who you are and what are you going to looking to represent and building out that type of legacy. That was really important to me, especially going through what they've went through and understanding what they went through and really being the best you can possibly be with what you're provided. And I think I'm very humble with that experience to really try to drive to be better than what my parents were. And I think that's why every parent will want that as well, to make sure your legacy is getting stronger and stronger throughout the generations. Um, my second piece would have really been military. I went into the military at a younger age and a teenager as a teenager. And really, the military really taught me the knowledge and the background, the leadership capabilities, and the team-based perspective, and really how to lead by example. Those are some of the things I really focus on. And with the military, was really building out that community because we work as a team. We also work to help other people. And those aspects and those fundamental principles is what really drove me into creating who I am as my brand. Um, and I think the last piece is really just my career, what I've gone through my career, what I've seen in my career, and also the great mentors I had in my career who really guided me to develop my leadership to where it is today. And that's also not thinking about yourself as your success, but the success of others and how we can really bring out the best in other individuals because you're as strong as your weakest link, and that's one of my mottos I always had. And how can we always push somebody to get to their best, make the best, to actually be who they actually are and be the best that they can possibly be. And I think those are the three, I think, areas in my career or areas overall that really made me into who I am today, being the president of Eclipse Ontario.
So you indicated your parents, your family infused you with great ideals and goals and inspired you. You indicated the military was a big part of who you are today, and then of course the different roles you've had in your career. So let's go back now in time. You're in school. And were you kind of a science person or a business-oriented person or kind of a generalist? What were your interests in school?
Well, the funny thing was, I know we talk about where did you come from, where did you originated from. I honestly was an accountant. I studied to be an accountant, focusing on my CGA and my CPA. It wasn't until I actually hit college in which I was always into computers. I was always into gaming, into different aspects of IT, but I never really used it as one of my course curriculums. But it wasn't until I got into college and post-secondary where I really saw the passion in where I really wanted to go in IT. And it was really changing the trajectory of my career at that point in time. Because I was already going through the accounting, which I completed my accounting aspect of it. But where did I really want to be and where was my true fit? And I was looking for areas or angles that I could really um, do deeper dives into to see how I can transition from an accounting perspective into compliance, but then really into tech, into IT where I really wanted to belong. So I do think that learning a little bit of an accounting aspect was really critical because it provided your analytical skill sets. It made you create more of a roadmap or a strategy of how you wanted to create formulas and also get complex financial calculations completed. Those type of small characteristics really allowed me to have a smoother transition into IT because to me, IT and accounting have some similarities from a characteristic perspective that you can definitely leverage.
So in high school, you were really interested in accounting and finance and things like that. But that interest continued in college as well. But you also studied um, business and things like that, or
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So my interest in accounting just definitely went into post-secondary, but there was always that other piece of me which was into IT. So it will allow me to look at other opportunities within college and so forth to look at other small little courses I could take in IT to develop those skill sets, which I really started to really enjoy and develop even stronger. So I wanted to make a little bit of a course correct, if you wanted to say, at that point in time in my trajectory.
but you also indicated your interest in the armed forces. So how did that happen?
Well, actually, that happened at a younger age. I was 16, 17 at the time when I went into the armed forces. At that point in time, I would say that aspect of being a leader was never really into that, into my, I would say into my process at that point in time. But I needed to make a change. I knew that at that point in time, and with the guidance of my parents, I felt it was the right move for me to kind of get outside of the mind and move into something that was a little bit different, but could really redefine my next part of my history or my future. And so I really went into the Canadian Armed Forces for those reasons. I think the first part of it was kind of you don't know what to expect. And I think that's what people don't understand when you're going to, you're like, I don't know what I'm going to be. I'm going to be infantry. I'm going to be a lieutenant. I'm going to go into communications. There's so much other areas in the Canadian Armed Forces you can go into. But for me at that point in time, I wanted to be more general at that point in time. So I went into infantry. But within infantry, there was a lot of things a lot of courses that we did take that really developed me into who I am today. And that's more team-based courses, as well as I will say leadership courses that we were able to take to really build out those skill sets and working as a team.
Okay, so you have your interest in accounting and things like that, and you have your interest in the armed forces, and you get the sort of teamwork and leadership kind of skills and things like that, and discipline in the armed forces.
Yeah.
What was your first job?
My first job in as a teenager, or was first job coming out of college.
Coming out of college?
Coming out of college, my first job actually was within RBC, working in the banks. It wasn't an amazing position. It was actually working in the call center. I worked as call center representative in personal banking, and through that, I was able to really understand more about the banking area. Um, because I really wanted to understand a little bit about banks. I was very open to what, the future had to hold. And I really went into the banking side of the business, really understanding it. And I learned a lot of key pieces of banking that a lot of people probably wouldn't even know. And through that, I was able to really, I would say, excel in my skill sets in personal banking that allowed me to get promoted into positions in business banking. And then from business banking into healthcare professionals. And that's where I got my first taste of working with a bigger team, but also working with specialized clients, which was the doctors within the GTA. So that's really working with the doctors in their businesses as well as with their personal accounts and really helping them in the day-to-day side of the business. And that really opened up my areas of where I really wanted to go into. And that allowed me to work with their accounts, understanding how we can improve things, create solutions. But the one thing that was missing, and it was at RBC where I realized what was missing, which was back my IT aspect of it. And then I was able to move into the opportunity to work in the US, and I worked for a company in Wells Fargo. And at that time, I was put into quality assurance. So that was really going back into IT. That was going to where I really wanted to do and looking at the controls and processes and seeing how they actually worked. And if there was areas for improvement, definitely focusing on those areas to help improve and make the control, the IT process more efficient. And I think at that point in time, that really allowed me to, I think that position really resonated with me as regards to it was going back to what I really enjoyed doing, which was within IT and helping out IT systems and processes and seeing how we can make them better.
Okay, so let's go in chronological order then. You go from college, you go to RBC, you get your first sort of introduction to banking, you go into Wells Fargo in the US, you start working in the controls aspect with regard in the banking industry. Where did you go from there?
Well, definitely from the Wells Fargo, I moved into more senior leadership, executive leadership, helping them with the KPIs and KRIs. But my career was really stayed really in the financial world, and then I went back into Canada's market back with Bank of Montreal, and then really focus on those financial areas. So I really did I call it the Tour de France in the financial sector,
Yeah.
but within the financial sector. I was getting closer and closer to truly an IT focused role. And when I was at Scotiabank, I was in a truly IT focused role. And that's working with data governance and the IT governance part of the business for enterprise information management. And that was really where I felt this is where I needed to be. Because it wasn't just focusing on controls, we focused on systems and the operations and really about data. And I love the things about data because of the fact that the complexity of data is so unique. There's you have the PAI, the personal identifiable the personal identifiable information, but you're also dealing with different other aspects, and you're seeing how pieces of data are calculated or computed into different reports. And there's so much areas of focus that an IT professional needs to have to make sure they get the right, I guess, requirements completed to get out the right outcome for the senior leaders or for the business. It is so interesting to see how much information is used within the financial institutions to do just the day-to-day business. And if anybody was able to really see the behind the scenes, it's pretty impressive.
So, you go through this banking, RBC to Wells Fargo to Bank of Montreal and Scotiabank, and you won the best award. Tell me how you won that at the Scotiabank.
Well, at Scotiabank, I think one of the areas where I definitely need to improve in, or to help Scotiabank improve in, was really with their data governance. And at that point in time with the data governance, we didn't really have a process or anything in place that's documented. So working with the teams, but also building out my team, we really created out a data governance framework, which was well recognized within Scotiabank, within international, within enterprise, as well as within our subsidiary businesses that we actually had. And we used that as our foundational piece to really advertise this is how data practices need to happen. And from the data governance framework, we looked at data classifications, we looked at information security and how we need to classify data and how we need to use it. That leveraged that program that I created leveraged itself into really helping out Scotiabank within risk management, within when we looked at the BIS principles, being a SME to help out other areas of the business with data governance and those aspects. So, through that, I was able to go into many committees as well as be a part of a lot of conferences, talk about data governance, talking about the importance of it, and really being a pioneer at that point in time because you're looking at 2015, 26, I would say 2013, 2015, where data governance was talked about, but it wasn't really an influence. It wasn't an area of scope in a lot of industries, but we were the pioneers of really pushing that out as well.
But you also led this project on the paperless license initiative. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, that was another stint I had, and that was working with the government itself. So I worked with the provincial regulators, and that was an interesting aspect because I've been a part of the private sector for a long period of time. And, in the private sector, we always have to do regulations. And there's always a back and forth from working committees that had to work with regulators, why we had to have regulations this way and why are the deadlines so tight and so forth. But being a part of this initiative, and it was a very unique area or opportunity, I was able to see the other side of it. And that was really seeing, um, I would say, the government angle, the important aspect of how much processes you need to run in order to launch a launch initiative such as this, the complexity of the initiative, the amount of sign-offs you need to get at different areas of the government bodies you need to get, working with other regulators. I was able to really get an inside feed of how the regulators work, how they operated, how they thought, and the amount of working committees you actually had to have with the industry to figure out, is this the right approach? Okay, no, if this is not the right approach, let's take it back. And truth be told, many initiatives take a long period of time to launch in the government because of the amount of levels that you have to go through or review and rigor and controls you had to go through. I think that was one of the more interesting aspects. And I really openly say that through the government experience, I learned a lot of patience. You need to have patience when you're dealing with initiatives. I know in the private sector, we like, if we're going to go, we're just going to go. If we're saying we're going to get it done in 6 months, we're going to get it done in 6 months. But in the government, that's actually a 2-year process. You have to go back to the table multiple times because you have to make sure it supports the industry, but supports the outcome, and the outcomes can change at certain times.
I mean, that's really interesting. There's a paperless license initiative at the Financial Services Commission of Ontario, and it changed all licenses to be electronically distributed to the Ontario insurance industry. So that's a really big achievement, and it's kind of like a model. And for those international viewers of this interview, I mean, Ontario's our biggest province, and our biggest cities are in Ontario. So, but you also received the Above and Beyond Certificate of Recognition from the Ontario Provincial regulator. Is it related to this work or something else?
Yeah, definitely was related to this work. There was a lot of team members that were also recognized at the same time, but it was recognizing our work and our due diligence to get this initiative off the ground and running. Because this was something when I came on board, it was in the process of talking about it, and so we got it from discussions to a reaction to a release and publication, and that was a huge accolade for everybody in that team as well.
You a lecturer in the Federated Press Internal Controls, and can you talk more about that, like the Internal Controls Conference, the Policy Development Conference, and the High Policy Review Conference? What are those conferences where you lectured? What can you kind of summarize each? The Internal Controls, Policy Development, and the High Policy Review.
Yeah, the internal controls conference that I lectured at was really talking about getting SMEs together with a bigger audience, of course, to talk about internal controls, the importance of internal controls, looking at Sarbanes-Oxley's, looking at Bill 198, looking at SOC itself. Why these controls are essential, and why do we need to have certain controls with certain parameters surrounding it? And I think people look at controls and like, okay, this is just what we have to do. We have to document it. But to get the true meaningful perspective of why the controls are so important to have to prevent certain things that have happened in the past and then that's the reason why regulations. So we were really focusing on how we can create controls in a impactful way with least resistance. And so it's really educating people on how those controls work. And from infancies to the way it gets published and documented and how we're going to run it, it's not just about creating the control, it's about the ongoing maintenance of the control. And I think that's where a lot of people took a lot of notes and appreciation, because I said anybody can create a control. Anybody can. We have chat GPT, we have AI now. We can create these controls easily, but we need to make sure we have the appropriate control oversight measures ongoing to ensure that it's always running. But remember, controls are always evolving. So we always have to be on top of our controls to make sure that they're evolving with the regulations and with the industry that we're dealing with, as well as with our organization. So it's a very organic but beautiful, complex formula, or I would say structure, that if you do the controls in the right way, they will grow with the organization and grow with what the industry has. I would then say talking about policy development. Definitely was a part of that when being a lecturer on that, when especially when I was associated with Scotiabank. Just based on the policies that we created at the higher level for data governance framework at that time, that was new. So people were talking about how do you create data governance? What was the process that you took to come down to the foundational pieces of data governance at that point in time to create that type of framework? And we really focused on how we developed from the conceptual perspective of discussion to basically documentation and then the governance oversight to support the documentation and the structure type of documentation that needs to happen after that you create a data governance framework. And that's the type of standards that you create as well as the type of guidelines and SOPs. So that conference was really focusing on how to create policies that are meaningful and impactful, but make sure you have the additional controls and other documentation to support it as well. So that was really a step-by-step perspective to help people and how to develop policies. And then the high-level review was very important because one of the aspects that people we talk about, but we don't talk about a lot, is basically policy reviews, not just at the business level, but at the senior leadership level, the board level. What does that look like? And what are the processes and controls you need to have in place for board of directors reviews? And what are the influences you need to make sure you have in place to ensure you have appropriate high-level review of your policies at the board to provide them the right information, not a lot of information, but the right information that for them to make a corrective or a directive or a decision in itself to support the organization. Because the board of directors in many organizations are not members from the organization. There's members from other areas of the business. So you're getting them all together. They're asking great questions on cybersecurity, even AI, even other aspects of the risk landscape. And you need to create the right type of policies that provide that level of understanding, as well as the right summary and highlights to support it. So those are what we were talking about in those areas. And we also talked about how policies will change. And I think one of the areas that we kind of talked about that time, even though it wasn't talked about a lot, we did talk about a little bit of crypto and what does that look like? What does blockchain look like? And I said these are some of the things that are happening in the future that we see now that's established now in today's society that that made people think about it a little more and put a lot of our aspects into considerations, especially for board of directors.
I mean, I can see, from your background, where you have specialties like data management and governance, consulting, information technology, project and program implementation, policy development, research and analysis, risk management, compliance analysis, regulatory reporting, financial areas, process improvements, and quality assurance, health and safety. I can see all of your background giving you this capability, but also a specialty of yours is excuse me, motivational speaking, and you're also a volunteer and not-for-profit organization. So clearly you're a great speaker because you're very eloquent here in our chat today. But now that's a great segue for not-for-profit organization because you're the president of CIPS Ontario. So can you describe CIPS first of all, the Canadian Information Processing Society, what it is? And then, the different sort of roles that you have with CIPS, and then some other roles that you have in the the broader community. For example, you're in Black Professionals in Tech Network, things like that. And what are sort of the goals there? But let's use CIPS as a hub. So, what is CIPS? And because you are the president of CIPS Ontario.
Yeah, so so CIPS is the Canadian IT Professionals Association, right? So one of the things about CIPS is it was developed in 1958, really focusing on IT processing at the time and focusing on ethical practices we need to have as IT practitioners. And that itself, CIPS is such an important organization because of the legacy and the foundational practice that they bring in today's society to really bring out ethical practice for IT professionals. One of the things about CIPS itself is that CIPS, I'm CIPS Ontario, we have different other societies throughout every other province of Canada. And every province itself follow these standards and ethical practices to ensure anybody who's a member of CIPS has the appropriate standards and guidance to show or produce or recognize ethical practices being used within their current role as well as within their organization. The different designations we have is the ITCP as well as the ISP. And these are designations that really are established for professionals to show that, yes, I am an IT professional, but we do follow ethical practices. The unique thing about CIPS is that we do have bylaws in certain provinces. And in Ontario, we have a bylaw that actually every member has to follow because of the bylaw that's regulated by Ontario. We need to ensure that we are doing things ethically within our current roles. And I think that's one of the most important things in CIPS itself right now, especially what you're seeing with the IT landscape changing in so many areas, and from cybersecurity, AI, even from an IT risk aspect of it. We need to make sure that we're doing things in an ethical manner and we're following the right practices and practices that we hold ourselves up to within CIPS itself. And through our bylaws and our guidelines that we have at CIPS, our IT professionals need to adhere to it and follow it to its fullest. I would say CIPS is unique because the IT environment is expanding. It is going, from when I came in 2017 as a member to where it is now, the IT landscape has quadrupled when it comes down to different versions of IT. We're dealing with AI now. We have blockchain that came out. It's always evolving, but it's evolving for a better good. But the reality, what we have to do is not just focus on these new opportunities, but we also have to make sure we have the right ethical strategy to support it as well. And with CIPS, we also work with the international community, IFIP. So there's a lot of things that we're looking at how we can improve IT practices to support the environment. And so these are a lot of the great things that we're talking about at CIPS right now with our members, but also making sure that we're doing things in an ethical manner. And with the type of new the type of new skill sets are coming in from different areas of the country, especially in Canada, there's so much information coming through Ontario right now or through Canada that it's so important for us to really promote CIPS and the ethical practice that we need to have in place with the IT professionals that are coming in. And there's so much opportunities in itself, but we just need to make sure that it's done in the most ethical manner.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
I think
CIPS
that's
is,
one of the aspects I really think about overall about CIPS itself. And I'm honored to be the president. I see from where we were to where we are now, we're making great strength, we're evolving at a great rate. I think recently we just did the CIPS Women in Technology Conference, recognizing women in technology and how we as CIPS, as a member, even myself, how we can support that movement and get more people into technology, but do it in an ethical manner at the same time.
I mean, CIPS, Canadian Information Processing Society, has such a great legacy. Founded in 1958, as you indicated, they're part of the International Federation for Information Processing, or IFIT, which was founded in 1965. And CIPS is a founder of that organization and continues to play a prominent role in that organization. CIPS is a founder of the Solo Accord, which is an international standardization program in kind of like engineering programs globally. So, CIPS has always kind of punched above its weight, right? Both nationally and internationally. And you're a critical part of that movement with CIPS. You're also a member of the Black Professionals in Tech Network. Can you talk more about that network?
Yeah, the Black Professional Tech Network is an interesting aspect. It was a concept that was created previously to really bring Black professionals together from a technology background. At that time, there was a lot of areas of concern about our certain professionals getting the right recognition, the right promotion, and how can we build a stronger network to support the Black professionals. And being a part of this network was really important because it provided me an opportunity to really see the amount of great Black professionals that are out there in the technology realm, in the technology industry itself. And I think with this network and what I'm trying to build as well with other networks is how do we promote that network? How do we promote those brands and bring more people into these networks to get the right talent? Because there's so much talent out there. I don't know if they're going through the right networks or they're going through the right associations to be recognized. And I think the Black Professional Technology Network really supports that, recognizing those talents for people who are in, I would say, um, high risk areas and different areas of in society, getting those people who have those talents out there and being recognized so they can be brought into organizations and help those organizations succeed. And so one of the things I definitely promote, especially with the Black Professional Tech or the BPTN, is recognizing those individuals and getting and working with them through CIPS and how we can improve CIPS as well as improve those networks itself and bring out those brands there, because definitely it's not just talk about the members, but it's also talk about the ethical aspects that CIPS brings as well, and bring out those aspects. And I think together, promoting those aspects really can bring out the best talent that we can have in Canada.
I mean, I can definitely see you, you're closing in on 25 years of multidisciplinary experience in cybersecurity, information security, regulatory compliance, risk management, process improvement, data governance, policy development, blockchain, and quality assurance and internal controls. And I can see that leading into all of these designations you have as well. So I like to kind of get into these designations. So you got an MBA. So what was your focus in your MBA? Was it sort of in the financial side, or was it more general?
It actually was more general. I wanted an MBA because I wanted to have a better understanding at that level of what are certain things that people who have the MBA designations look at and recognize. And I did an international MBA. I didn't do it directly to Canada. I did it through Edinburgh, so I did it through the UK. I wanted to get that type of experience to understand what it is for leaders when we have MBAs. What do we need to actually present and provide to organizations at that level, to support them in their success? So, that was a great opportunity in which I took, and I'm happy to say I graduated with my international MBA. But it was a great opportunity to understand how the UK system works from an educational perspective. It is a lot different than what we do in here in Canada. And it was a great opportunity nonetheless to understand the macro, microeconomics, marketing. It was because it was general, it was a holistic of aspects that we had to do to understand more business administration or business processes itself. So it was really important at that point in time for me to learn.
I mean, the MBA through it's the University of Edinburgh, right? I mean, that's a pretty
Yes.
rigorous program, and so congratulations on making it through that program, right? I mean, it's a great program, internationally
Yeah.
renowned, and it's one of the top programs in the world. So it's a significant accomplishment. It requires a lot of dedication
Yeah.
to do that. Now you got something called an SSBBC. What's an SSBBC?
Six Sigma black belt
Ah, yes, of
certification.
course.
So one of the things, because I'm into processes, I love processes, I love IT processes. I really wanted to break down what does processes look like. So in order for me to really talk about it, I need to do it myself. So definitely I did the green belt, yellow belt, black belt, then Lean Six Sigma belt, lean belts, really becoming a professor in how to build out processes from the bottom up, engagement, and how to improve those processes. Looking at processes just from from a high level, and really identifying areas where there could be improvements. I love improvements. I love improving things. So, and I think that's a little bit talking about my accounting background, looking at those efficiencies, looking at calculations, breaking those things down, and then coming up with a conceptual perspective of where we think it can look like, the cost supporting it, as well as how we're going to get it done and make it more efficient. These are some of the things that I would say the 6ML really brings out, is looking at business processes, IT process overall holistically, and breaking it down to as a kind of fishbone diagrams into any of those type of perspectives in those concepts. You're going to break it down to the basic finite, but then basically breaking down the basic finite, you actually understand every aspect of the process and all the key dependencies to really build up process and to make it more efficient.
And you also have an SSLP. So what's an SSLP?
That's the lean. That's a lean. Yeah, that's a lean. That's a lean 6MO professional belt. Yeah.
And then, of course, your ISP. So if you can explain that.
All right, that's an information systems professional security or if information systems professional. That's actually the ISP is actually provided by is a designation from CIPS, and that's where as an IT technology professional, you're designated that you read the guidelines, a code of conduct, and yet you have to complete a test to really show your ethical aspects that you can follow the ethical controls or ethical boundaries that are established by CIPS itself. So it allows people to be recognized that you are an IT professional with ethical training in itself.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fairly extensive process to making sure you have the required combination of educational background, industry experience, leadership, and so on, right? And technical experience, and you have to prove it and document it to get the ISP. So it's like the technology equivalent of a CPA or a CA in the accounting profession, or um, each profession has its sort of designations, and that's the one for the Canadian technology professional. It's an accreditation of them,
Yeah,
certification of them, right? So
absolutely. And I think what we're doing to make it stronger is we're also leveraging Sophia as well. And that's another area of Sophia is another I guess another type of training program we can take to really see what levels you're at from an IT practitioner perspective. Sophia is definitely available on our CIPS website on kips.ca. You can understand more about the Sophia program, but it's really understanding your knowledge background in IT, depending on what area of IT you're in. And that really helps support CIPS professionals as well with their levels of IT practices.
yeah, and then KIPS is part of an international body called IP3, which is
Mhm.
part of IFIP, which is a global recognition program of professionalism. And that means that people who get the designations meet requirements on the technical side and also on the ethical side, and it's globally recognized and transferable as well in some aspects. So, a very good discussion of the professionalism and what it means to be a professional, just like a doctor has to undergo certification to be a professional doctor, while a technologist in Canada, KIPS is a proponent of having a professional standards that technologists have to adhere to, and the ISP is a hallmark of that, and there's others as well. Let's get into some of the areas that you wish to get into. So we talked about your career up to this point. What's your aspirations of where you want to move from a career standpoint or professional standpoint in the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, definitely looking into more senior leadership roles. Then being fortunate being the president of CIPS itself really has opened me up to seeing the other networks, the other associations like IFIP and so forth, and seeing how we can make more of a difference. One of the areas I definitely want to support, and I'm working on that right now, is bringing out the new generation. Um, Definitely working with the younger IT professionals that are coming out. That's a passion of mine. And seeing how we can develop them into greater individuals that can support IT in the future. It's really about building up legacies. I think for me, I'm looking more into more the senior leadership roles and promoting IT professionals, if it's within cybersecurity, if it's in data governance itself, or in the IT risk management. Definitely focus on those areas because I think those are areas where we definitely need a lot more, I would say more hands-on and guidance in with the way that the evolution of technology is going today with AI. We need to make sure we get the IT professionals up to speed in ethical practice and ethical boundaries in those areas as well. And it's not just getting them there, but also creating that oversight mechanism that we're watching it as it's growing and evolving. I love the evolution, but we also have to make sure we're also have the right oversight over that evolution as well.
Now let's get into some of the trends that are out there. So you indicated you being an early adherent to blockchain. Do you think that blockchain and even the cryptocurrency side is going to settle and become stable, be recognized globally by all financial institutions? Or do you think it's always going to be a little bit murky? Because cryptos are a little bit murky still. So
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up. Blockchain's always been a pioneer. I still believe it's a little bit in the pioneer stage, but I think it's going to a conceptual stage quietly. There's so much components. Like I think people are misguided a little bit on blockchain. Everybody's looking at blockchain as a financial component. Yes, it is through crypto, but the components of the foundational pieces of blockchain go beyond financial. It's how we can create better processes and systems to work together in the future with the right controls and privacy controls around it. And I think the one big thing that we're talking about today is data privacy, data security, the standards around it. Blockchain is actually showing that they actually have the right controls and processes in place, but it's how do we conceptually design it to support a non-financial platform. And I think that's where we're trying to go into. I think the insurance industry definitely is going into it from, I know that blockchain has the insurance version of healthcare of blockchain, and it's not just financials. They're looking at how they can put health information into that as well. So I think overall we're a little past the pioneer stage. We're going to conceptual, but I think it's not going to go away. We are going to be using aspects of the blockchain foundation, if not the blockchain foundations, in other aspects of our business. I think we just need to, being early adapters, I think we just have to understand how the conception that's going to look, because you're changing, you're evolving where we're coming from currently today. And I think, we're using our data centers and systems in certain aspects through architecture, but we're going to be changing those aspects if you go into blockchain. But it will be more stronger scrutiny and controls that you will have in place to support it. I think those are the things that we need to start talking and communicating about and broadcasting, because people are asking, how do I protect my information? And it's not just big organizations, these are smaller mom and pops organizations asking that. And if we can provide a level set fit for size option through blockchain, that might be a great opportunity for some smaller organizations to go through.
You also see a lot of the news, the confluence of chip technology, supercomputing, quantum computing, AI, machine learning. Where do you think any of those will go? Do you have any views on any one of those that you want to talk about?
Oh, I think the supercomputer is going to be again, it's expensive now. Like again, everything's expensive in the beginning, but when we're able to truncate it and put it into I would say into a more I would say controllable, I would say more financial fit, a model. I the world, it's endless possibilities there. I think the supercomputer is here. It's going to be here for a long period of time. The type of information that we are computing on a day-to-day basis requires a supercomputer technology. It does. But I also look at supercomputer beyond that, and I'm going to go back a little bit to IFIC, Stephen, talking about environmental process that we need to have surrounding it. I think from an environmental perspective, supercomputers are important, but we just have to make sure we have the right measures and components to support the environment at the same time. So there's a lot more work that's required for supercomputers, but again, where it's going, I think this is where we need to go. We just need to make sure we have the right control and boundaries surrounding it.
How about generative AI and large foundation models? Do you think that we're going to get AGI, this artificial general intelligence, and then what impact is this going to have on society and jobs and things like that in the next 5 years?
I think AI is going to support. I personally love the AI. Honestly, you can do a lot more meetings without being there. You can just have your face there. That was great conversations. But I would say that AI is, I think many people are worried about where AI could possibly go. But I think that the possibilities of what AI is currently doing today provides necessity why we need AI. When we're talking about guidance and assistance, grammar, spelling, every aspect is using AI capabilities. We have Copilot that are creating speeches for people. And to say that where we were, I wouldn't even say 2 years times. I think it can help us when it comes to a lot of calculations and computations that we have within our formulas, even from a financial perspective, even to what we do in IT for our processing. I think AI is going to be a key component to it. I think AI is going to be a great, I call big brother to a degree to help people in their day-to-day work, to make which is a AI component for a legal side of the business. And that's impressive to me right now. So a lot of people are saying I have to go to a lawyer for this. You can actually go through another platform and get a lawyer type perspective. And I think these are some of the things that we're promoting right now, which is pretty impressive right now for the what I remember back in my days. I always remember Back to the Future with Marty McFly, and we had the shoes, we had the hoverboard skateboard, we had the VOP phone where everybody's like, oh my God, you're talking to a person and you can see them and you're talking and going back and forth. And everybody's like, that's never AI was talked about previously before. Everybody's like, oh, I don't know how that's going to work. Right now, there's companies right now creating hologram AIs. And that's impressive. So you can have a great conference like at one of the bigger conventions in Las Vegas, and you can have a whole hologram representation of a person talking about their company, talking about what they're doing. Hologram version of them. So that's kind of more like a Star Trek moment for me at this point in time. Like it's really impressive. So again, the future is so impressive to me right now. I can't wait to see what else is there going to be in the future at this point in time.
Well, we're down to our last question, Andrew, and or last couple of questions. Is there anything you want to talk about? What recommendations or questions you want to leave the audience?
I would say overall, just one other thing I do talk about is as being the president, I'm very humbled to be in the position of being president of CIPS Ontario society and helping so many people around the world and so forth in the industry. The one thing I want to leave on people is one thing I truly believe in, one of my ethical boundaries. To take some time away to really figure out how you can build a legacy to provide the future success in the next generations to come. I think it's important for us to take some time out for what we've done to get here. We need to give that back to the community as well and to the younger generation. And there's so much opportunity right now. I'm seeing the passion in these younger students. And we need to give them a little bit more time and dedication to really see what they have to offer. So definitely that's one thing I ask anybody to really focus on, that is to build out legacies in the succession of the new generation.
And that's your final recommendation as well, right?
That's my final recommendation.
So Andrew, thank you for coming in. You just have a remarkable career, a contribution, and success, and you've shared so many different insights with the audience, and very much appreciated. So really enjoyed our engagement today.
Yes, no, thank you very much for having the opportunity, Stephen.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.